I know. You saw that title and thumbnail and are shocked. Everybody knows that Penelope is more like Portia than Philippa or even Prudence. We all agree that she's smart like a mother, can be cunning and manipulative like a mother. And sure, Portia doesn't run a gossip column where she makes money off of reporting on the scandalous deeds, actions, and behaviors of the rest of the town like her daughter does. But like Penelope, she studies and observes the members of their society. She knows what drives them and what makes them tick. It's how she's able to scheme so well with Jack Featherington to pull off their Ruby scam. So I'm sure you consider it a stretch for me to say that Penelope is anything like her father, who we don't really get to see much of or know much about in the show, except that he's a gambler. But see, that particular trait right there is why I think Penelope Featherington is more like Archibald Featherington than most people realize. Because Penelope, like her father, loves to gamble, just in a bit of a different way. Now, when we first meet Archibald Featherington in the show, he seems like a pretty decent Regency father of the era. He loves his daughters, he tolerates his wife, he likes to hang out with the boys. But we also learn that he loves to gamble a lot. So much so that he's in a lot of debt. But like the gambling addict he is, he believes that all he needs is one shot, one well placed bet with the situation tweaked to be in his favor, and he will be swimming in sovereigns. And so he continues to try, upping the stakes each time, and eventually he was right. Except that his tweaked circumstances and thus earnings meant that he screwed over the wrong people, and they killed him for it. But Archibald Featherington, from the brief stint we got of him in season 1, showed that he is a character who loves a good gamble and appreciates a great payout. And as I was thinking about Penelope and how much she was like Portia, the question popped into my head about Lord Featherington and if there was any part of her father's character or behavioral traits that Penelope exhibited, similarities that I could observe between the both of them. And I immediately thought, oh, they both love a good gamble. And no, I don't mean that Penelope loves to place bets on horses with the hope that she would get a financial return. Penelope is making bank. We already established this in the scene when she told her mother, Colin, and Eloise that she could easily pay the £10,000 that Cressida was blackmailing her for. Penelope Featherington is a self-made, uber-rich woman thanks to her columns. No betting on horses in sight. No, when I say that she loves a good gamble, I mean that Penelope, throughout the seasons of the show that we've gotten so far, is almost always taking risks. And the risks she takes are often not one where she is 100% sure of the results. But she takes it nevertheless. And when she realizes that things don't necessarily pan out the way in which she wants them to, she tries again and again, each time raising the stakes and making a few modifications so they would eventually work in her favor. What do I mean by that? After giving her support to Marina for the latter to be reunited with the love of her life, George, and Marina received the letter that Portia and Mrs. Varley had forged from George, telling her that he wanted nothing to do with her and her pregnancy, which in turn led Marina to decide that she needed to find herself a husband fast to protect herself and her child, which meant that she cast her eyes on Colin as her preferred choice of a husband. Penelope places several gambles in that particular storyline to try and prevent Marina and Colin from getting married, since Colin had no idea about the pregnancy and also because she was in love with him and didn't want him cuckolded by the woman he chose as his wife. But just like the gambler that her father is, she builds slowly, increasing the stakes and the risk if the situation were to go south for her. She starts small, reminding Colin that his plan was always to travel the world and marriage wasn't in his cards. When that doesn't work, she ups the stakes, trying to convince Marina to find her options in other men, making an attempt at a convincing argument that Colin is too young to marry quickly or early, to which Marina points out that Colin is the better choice and option, though, as he's eager and clearly likes her. With that hand done, she tries again, a separate gamble, this time around with her mother, figuring that Portia has the power to override Marina's choices and decisions if Portia can be made to see that Colin isn't a viable immediate option, that he would not be interested in getting married quickly, which is something that Portia cannot let stand, as the circumstances require that Marina marry as quickly as possible so the truth of her pregnancy isn't revealed. When Marina, however, assuages Portia's fears by stating that she very much intends to seduce Colin, so he would have no choice but to marry her for fear of ruining her reputation, Penelope again comes back to the board, upping the stakes by going straight to Colin to inform him that Marina had someone she used to love who she was still communicating with even after coming to London. Colin, though, besotted at the thought of marrying Marina, doesn't care and basically tells Pen that whatever Marina did before she came to London is not his business or his concern, as what he's focused on at that moment was his future with her. And that is the point where, if you're watching someone at the gambling table who keeps getting dealt a bad hand and has lost all options, this is often the point where you expect them to step away and accept the loss. But just as we come to realize that Lord Featherington doesn't know the word enough or when it's better to walk away, the same can be said about Penelope, who instead comes back with even higher stakes that she keeps raising. She basically snoops around in her mother's room and Marina's, and when caught, she shows Marina proof that the letter she had received from George stating that he wasn't interested in her or their child was forged by most likely Portia and Mrs. Varley. But this doesn't do anything to change Marina's mind, as she rightfully points out that George still hasn't responded to her letters anyway, which means she's still stuck and desperately in need of a husband, and Colin Bridgerton will do very much thank you, even if Penelope is in love with him. And that is when Penelope Featherington brings out the big guns. That is her using her Lady Whistledown column to reveal the truth about Marina's pregnancy, which ends up ruining the potential marriage between Colin and Marina's chances permanently. It's what one would consider a high stakes, high rewards play, because this could easily have gone south. If that column had dropped a minute after Marina and Colin escaped London to Scotland, where they were planning to elope to, it would have been catastrophic. I mean, we did see that the issue dropped whilst Colin and Marina both had their bags in hand. So if it had dropped a minute later, not only would Pen have publicly ruined Marina, but she would have also publicly cuckolded her very good friend and the man she loves, without any form of redemption in sight. High risk indeed. But the rewards for her were worth it. Yes, Colin was devastated. Yes, Marina was ruined. Yes, the scandal also affected her entire family. But did Penelope get the outcome and reward she wanted? Yes, she did. It was a gamble that paid off handsomely. And she continues this streak in season 2 with her biggest gamble yet, how to keep her business as Lady Whistledown running amidst the uptick in events and Eloise being constantly by her side now that the latter had had her coming out into society debut. And although she fumbles and almost loses, she eventually does score a win when she's able to convince Genevieve Delacroix to go into business with her. Penelope would provide the writings. Genevieve, by sewing the columns into her dresses, would provide the avenue for it to be dropped at the printers, who would then pass it on to the distribution network of delivery boys, with nobody any wiser. Which is such a clever move. And everything would have been all fine and dandy if the stakes weren't raised even further for Penelope. Because now she has to contend with how she can maintain her anonymity with the Queen out for blood and desperate to unmask Lady Whistledown's identity. Unfortunately, there has to be a couple of bad ants tossed in the pot. And when Eloise gets caught in the crosshairs and the Queen decides that she is Lady Whistledown, it is up to Penelope to decide to take the biggest gamble of the season. One that has the capacity to ruin a friend's reputation, but would also save her friend from the wrath of the Queen. It is a high risk, definitely a big blowout, but with a humongous reward play. And Penelope takes it. She publishes the Lady Whistledown column, outing Eloise's recent stint and association with political radicals. Eloise's reputation is in shambles. The Queen is convinced that there is no way Eloise would have ousted herself as a radical were she truly to be Lady Whistledown, and the day is saved. Of course, having to do that utterly devastates Pen, who ends up giving up writing Lady Whistledown for quite a while out of guilt. Because sure, the gamble paid off, but the cost was too high. And then she realizes that the cost is even higher than she had initially thought. Because Eloise discovers the truth about her identity as Lady Whistledown, and so, although she's able to save her friend by doing so, she also loses her friend. It's the luck of the draw, and in this case, Penelope Featherington was not very lucky. And then season 3 comes around, and I personally think it's just a season of Penelope deciding, so what? Fuck it. I'm gonna take the gamble. Let's see if it pays off. It's what drives her to make the choice that rather than sit at home and be unmarried whilst her sisters rule over her, should they be the ones to birth the new Featherington heir, she instead makes the decision to overhaul her entire wardrobe and change her hair, all of which is a big risk in itself. But it's a risk that pays off. She catches the attention of the ton and revels in it, until she realizes that changing her appearance doesn't necessarily mean changing who she is on the inside. And who she is on the inside at the start of the season is someone who flounders when it's time to talk to and flirt with the men of the ton. But then, she gets another chance to step up to the plate and roll the dice. Colin shows up to offer her help in securing a husband by teaching her how to basically step out of her own head and be herself when talking with potential suitors. She secures an attachment with Lord Deblin and almost secures a marriage proposal with him, but is instead foiled by Colin Bridgerton finally getting his head out of his ass to realize just how amazing Penelope Featherington is. We get the hottest makeout session of a carriage ride ever. Colin proposes, she says yes, and then the drama for season 2 comes roaring back in because the Queen is still desperate to unearth the identity of Lady Whistledown, and now Pen's arch nemesis has decided to lay claim to her life's work and take on the Lady Whistledown's identity for herself, which is already infuriating for Penelope as is. But then the situation is amped up even more. Cressida, according to Eloise, has an axe to grind with the Bridgerton family, which means that Pen has to take a big gamble to help save the Bridgerton family's reputation. She must write an article fast enough and have it printed early enough to help put an end to any damage that Cressida's Lady Whistledown's issue might cause when it drops. And it is a gamble that pays off. Even as members of the Ton are still reading the first fake Lady Whistledown issue, Pen's true Lady Whistledown column is delivered to them, and by comparing the two columns, the Ton is able to tell who is the true Lady Whistledown. But as with every instance of a high reward coming with its cost, Pen has to deal with the fact that although she's able to save the day, her fiancé neither acknowledges that nor is he thankful for it. No, instead, in playing that hand, Pen unfortunately has her identity as Lady Whistledown discovered by Colin, who is pissed and not in any way happy about that because of all the hurt she had caused previously. And that drives a wedge into their relationship that is further compounded by Queen Charlotte circling the Bridgerton family like a hawk with the certainty that one of them is Lady Whistledown. And that is when Penelope Featherington, now Bridgerton, takes the biggest gamble of her life. She proceeds to reveal her identity to the two women with absolute power over her life and happiness, the Queen and her mother-in-law Violet. And then she takes things a step further and addresses the entire Ton, revealing her identity as Lady Whistledown and asks for their forgiveness whilst giving the promise that she would wield and use her column more responsibly now that she can't do it anymore from the shadows. It's the biggest gamble that she's ever made. And it pays off because she earns both the forgiveness of the Queen and the Ton, and is also reunited with her husband, finally settling the tension that had built between them since her secret was revealed at the end of season 3, episode 6. Like I stated earlier, I've always looked at Penelope as being her mother's daughter. They have so many similar traits. It's fascinating to notice. But I never, not until I got the idea for this video and was putting it together, ever actually considered Pen to be as much of her father's daughter as she is her mother's. And it is remarkable, really, because as much as Archibald Featherington was depicted as a weak man who was susceptible to his vices and whose vices did put his family in danger, there's still something to be said and admired, maybe, about a man who keeps trying in the hopes of catching that big break and turning the fortunes of his family around. And he might not have necessarily done it in the most honest and above board way, but hey, he did try with the hand he was dealt. Or rather, the hand he dealt himself, because truly, he was the one who put them all in that position in the first place. And even though he left his family in the most terrible of situations and circumstances, it took his wife's cunning and his daughter taking yet another gamble, using her identity as Lady Whistledown to serve as an alibi for the money that Portia was able to swindle to get their family out of the mess, to save the Featherington home and title. And I do actually enjoy the irony of that outcome. But what say you? Do you agree with me? Hit the like button if you do, hit the dislike button if you don't. Let me know in the comments if this topic is something you've thought of before, or if my words made you reconsider the similarity between Penelope and her papa. I would love to read your takes in the comments. Share this video with others if you think they too might enjoy what I have to say. It all helps my channel grow and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my patrons, without whom paying my bills would be practically impossible. Especially with the countdown in place that confirms that your girl will soon be out of paid 9-to-5 employment for the first time in 11 years. Thank you all. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, the link to do so is in the description box. I make new videos 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. All my videos drop at 5 p.m. EST on upload days. Whilst you wait for a new video from me, check out my Bridgerton's redemption problem and why the Lady Whistledown plot left you unimpressed video. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.